Hello there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Welcome to the continuing events of World Endangered Writing Day. And that said, what is coming up next is actually the very first aspect of World Endangered Writing Day that I imagined. I was actually driving around the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State, and I started thinking about all of the people I've come across in my research who are working to revitalize, call it what you like, their traditional scripts. Some of them are individuals, some of them are groups. In rare instances, some of them are even governments. So I decided that what I wanted to do was to have some kind of ceremony where the world could find out what they're doing. And the reason for that is that what they're doing is very much going against the stream, the current, the river where they are. In almost every case, these are going to be minority cultures who may in fact be marginalized by their local or their national government, and they're certainly not necessarily being supported. At best, their efforts may be ignored, but in some cases, they will be actively worked against. We know of at least 4 people who created writing systems for their people who were killed for doing so, and 2 more who were essentially forced into death by indirect means. So what we're going to do is I am going to, if we want to take the music down, then I am going to share my screen. And I am going to go to the screen for World Endangered Writing Day, and I'm going to go to Showcase. And now I'm going to showcase the people who I think are undertaking remarkable efforts in trying to revitalize their language or their script. Okay. So my internet is just catching up with me for a second here. It's the reason why you see this lovely kind of cream-colored screen. Here we go. All right. So it would be wonderful if I could turn around and say, here's $5,000 to fund, your next year of activities. We don't actually have $5,000 for that kind of thing. When I first conceived of this ceremony, I actually seriously thought of contacting Stephen King and saying, Stephen, I know you're a great champion of writers and writing. How about you fund this? So if anyone knows Stephen King who is watching this, do reach out to him and say his name was used. So I'm just going to scroll down here and talk about each of these individually. So the first of these is Inhabit Media, which is a publishing company and an education company in Nunavut, north of the Arctic Circle. And this is an area and a culture which is sparsely populated, scattered, marginalized in many ways, not economically well off. And so to run a publishing company under these circumstances is an extraordinary achievement. To run a publishing company which also is dedicated to using and maintaining not only the Inuit language or languages, but also the Canadian Aboriginal syllabics, is just an extraordinary act of dedication and devotion. And I have been delighted by many of their books. Some of them are children's books, like the one you see here, The Bee. Some of them are adult books. Many of the children's books in particular are fiction, but there are also non-fiction ones. There's a great non-fiction account of survival on the Arctic ice. So a big shout out to Inhabit Media. And in fact, we have an Inhabit Media book in our book giveaway, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. Calligraphy in an indigenous or minority script. So the award goes to Tamir. So Tamir is a Mongolian calligrapher. Mongolian calligraphy has been identified by the UN as a traditional art or skill in urgent need of safeguarding. But pretty much the only person who's safeguarding it is Tamir. And what is particularly distressing is that the area where Mongolian calligraphy has traditionally flourished, which is in Inner or Southern Mongolia, which is now a province of China, the Chinese are doing their best to undermine traditional Mongolian culture in that area, which makes the efforts of people like Tamir even more important. And we have some script about him. And if you go to the gallery at endangeredalphabets.com, you'll actually also find carvings that I've done of Tamir's work, which is just absolutely stunning. And the great thing about Mongolian calligraphy is that like Chinese calligraphy, ironically, it really captures not just the letters and the words, but the drama of the act of writing, the personality and the energy of the individual. So huge shout outs to Tamir and the newly opened Center for Calligraphy, which I believe I have linked to. Yes, I've certainly mentioned right in the middle of the text there, and I absolutely encourage you to look at the video here of this remarkable Center for Mongolian Calligraphy. Teaching and reviving traditional scripts. So it's one thing to digitize a script. It's one thing to create a new script, but the teaching is often one of the greatest obstacles, because traditionally, as we'll see, especially when we see the keynote presentation, the national government may not want to fund any teaching materials, storybooks, primers, anything like that. So here is a big shout out to Kalajatra, which is an organization of calligraphers, young calligraphers in Nepal, which does what I can only describe as guerrilla or pop-up calligraphy workshops. And so here you see one that has taken place literally on the street, and a group of people have sort of passing by, have turned up, and they have practiced learning to write in one of the traditional Nepalese family of scripts, which were at one point, not that long ago in history, not only banned, but anybody who was found using them could be arrested and their property could be confiscated. So this is a major act of cultural revival that's being carried out by Kalajatra. And they have some absolutely wonderful videos of themselves at work here. So I encourage you to go to this page and click on these links and watch them at work. Absolutely endowed with the energy and spirit of fun. This is exactly the spirit that those of us who were taught cursive in elementary school were not learning under. This is a much more fun way to learn. So we have a series of Kalajatra videos here that I highly recommend. So the next one is that the process of script revival is very rarely documented because the people who are doing it, as I say, are often on the margins, and they may not have the means, they may not have the support, and what they write may not be published. And so this is a remarkable book. So this is by Michael Pangilinan. And one of the indigenous scripts of the islands that are now called the Philippines is Kulitan. And Mike has been a major activist and writer in the effort to bring to life or bring back to life the Kulitan script for the Kapampangan language. And as I say, there are many people who are doing this around the world, but he has written about it, and kudos to his publishing house for actually publishing his book. And it's a fascinating read, and I actually quote quite a chunk from the book here on the site, because he names the people who are involved and what they're doing and what it takes and what obstacles they face. So the narrative of script revival has very rarely been written. And of course, there is almost nobody in the world who's teaching script revival. You know, there are plenty of courses now in higher education in language revitalization. There's nothing in script revitalization. So when those curricula get developed, this is the kind of text that is going to be extraordinarily valuable. So moving on down, creating new scripts for indigenous and minority languages. So there has been an extraordinary growth in new script creation, especially over the last 75 years, but especially in the last 25 years as people have started to use digital tools to do so. One of the curious features of this script creation is the person who has been the author or prime mover behind a new script is almost exclusively male, quite often startlingly young. So the Adlam script was created by two brothers, the older of whom was a teenager. And many other scripts have been created by young men in their teens or early 20s. One of the very, very few women involved in script creation is Professor Prasanna Shri of Andhra University in Eastern India, and she has created more scripts than anybody. In particular, what she specializes in is going to live with or to stay with minority communities. Advasi is the modern word. It's the respectful word for indigenous people. Unfortunately, there are much less respectful words in India because, as we've been hearing throughout the day, a community that doesn't have its own writing is often looked down upon. So she has immersed herself in these communities and then done something really quite remarkable that is important in terms of understanding writing in general. So she has created scripts for, at the moment, 19, I believe, she may be up to 20 by now, different language communities. But what she has recognized is that there is a huge difference between just putting together a number of characters from, say, the International Phonetic Alphabet, where the characters themselves have no visual identity, and in particular, no visual identity that connects with the community. And so what she has done is to say, if this is to be a visible representation of the community in the way that many other scripts are, it needs to remind that community of their heritage, maybe their mythology, maybe their history, maybe their way of life. It needs to be graphically part of their identity. And so each script is a series of characters that are all elaborations on or variations on a particular iconic glyph that somehow is connected to that culture. So in one particular culture where there is a long tradition that originally they were archers, bow and arrow users, each of the characters is an elaboration on a stylized bow. So for two reasons then. One, for recognizing the importance to Adivasi people of having their own script, and then two, to recognize the importance of that script being graphically and visually connected to their sense of pride and self-respect. Well done. Roving traditional script ambassador. When I started the Endangered Alphabets, one of the names I came across very soon was Christiane Cabaway, who I believe started out as a tattoo artist, which is really interesting because tattoos are not only extraordinarily intimate in terms of relationship to the individual who has the tattoo, but they're also very immersed in the graphic traditions of their culture. And Christiane had taken this sort of tattoo notion and really grown it in some fascinating ways. And so he began sort of using the influence of graffiti and hip hop, and then making a performance art essentially out of the writing of the Babayan script, which is one of the traditional scripts of the islands we now call the Philippines. And I highly recommend that you jump on the link here and see him at work. And see his clothing line. It's just a wonderful example of how to give visibility and energy to something which had been thought of as moribund or dead. In terms of government support for an indigenous or minority script, there is very little by and large. Actually, we have the wrong graphic here. My apologies. So instead, we have the right graphic, but I'm actually going to show you some other stuff as well in a minute. So in Morocco, the Amazigh people are actually a majority, not a minority. But the Amazigh people who once inhabited North Africa from the western borders of Egypt all the way to the Canary Islands, had the misfortune of never having a country of their own and being overrun sequentially by the Romans, by the Arabs, by the French, until they were treated as a minority even where they weren't. And even to this day, there are places where the Amazigh script is not accepted as an official script. And in fact, quite recently, somebody wanted to name their child Amazigh, and it was forbidden because it's not an official way of naming a child. So we're talking about a culture that has a script that is more than 2,000 years old, but has been underground and in many cases actively banned for centuries. And so as a result, it's highly unusual that a government, in this case the government of Morocco, should actually say, we need to actively research and understand and teach and support the reintroduction of this indigenous script. And so when we're done with me scrolling down this page, what I'm going to do is actually hold up some of the books from the IRCAM. It's called the Institut Royal de la culture amazigh. So they've produced these wonderful teaching books, which even take into account the fact that there are multiple multiple languages which vary somewhat, that need to be taught using the same script. Okay, so we're moving on here. Handwriting in an indigenous or minority script. So I was contacted not long ago by Mohammed Saad Ahmed, who I believe holds the world record for the number of different scripts in which he can write. And in fact, today he's taking part in activities around World Handwriting Day in his native Dhaka in Bangladesh. And so we have a video of him which we're going to post in notable videos. That's a page that's going to go up shortly, and you're going to see him writing by handwriting in many different scripts, many of which are minority scripts. Couple of honorable mentions. Zafri Hardy is one of a couple of people who's doing wonderful work creating new fonts based on old Brahmic scripts, and I've got a link to him. There is also this great organization in Indonesia, Aksara di Nusantara, who are reviving the many traditional scripts of Indonesia in terms of type design. So we have lots of different fonts, not just a font, but multiple fonts for these traditional scripts. And I've given a link to their website. And then there's another organization that I'm going to post a link to later today or tomorrow, which is Bahasa Bali, which has been doing phenomenal work reintroducing Balinese culture, Balinese language, and Balinese script. All right, so I am going to take a short break here, give my voice a little bit of a rest. Our programming will restart in about 8 minutes, when I'll talk to you about our relaunch of the Atlas of Endangered Alphabets, which is a massive undertaking. And I hope that I'll convey to you why it's a significant undertaking. You'll notice the donate button right there on the page. We have been very lucky to have a series of sponsors for World Endangered Writing Day. But frankly, we would like to expand it. We would like to be able to include more people from indigenous and minority communities. And we absolutely could do with your support. So please consider donating to us by hitting that button. And I'm now going to step away, and our programming will resume in 7 minutes. Thanks so much.